Hello and welcome to this month's Tech Talk. Last month, we talked about UCaaS in the restaurant industry. And this month, we have Daniel Platko joining us, and we'll be talking about SD-WAN. I'm Billy Talley, CEO of Teleconnect and your host. If you have any questions, please be sure to put them into chat, or if you're watching this in a replay, we're open to questions by messaging. But at the end of the video, we're going to open up the mics for questions then. Welcome, Daniel. Can you start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, been a sales engineer for the last 12 years in cloud hosting and cybersecurity. In primarily cybersecurity the last 10, and working around threat intelligence and vulnerability management.
So for those that are unfamiliar with SD-WAN, can you define it in some simple terms?
Yeah, I like to think of it as network simplification. Traditionally, you had MPLS networks that were architected to connect more of in a hub and spoke environment. And with the onset of cloud computing and cloud native applications, there had to be a new alternative, and thus the spawn of SD-WAN.
So what are the key components that make up an SD-WAN solution?
Well, I like to think it down and break it into 4 areas, right? The data area, control, management, and orchestration. So data being, you have a secure connectivity, control meaning centralized control and ease of management, or ease of controlling and deploying assets. And with the management of that, you can rapidly deploy and reconfigure and configure your SD-WAN network pretty much on the fly. And the orchestration of, right? So the orchestration of all the traffic, all the hosts, and you're orchestrating, traffic prioritization, congestion control, all those kind of things become more automated.
So what would be the main advantages of implementing an SD-WAN solution over a traditional WAN solution?
Simplicity, and cost, right? So much easier to control your cost. It's much simpler to deploy and use. I like to think of it as operational simplicity, easier management of the network. You can be carrier independent. A lot of the legacy MPLS networks, you'd have to go to a big carrier or a CLEC, even though they might have type 2 circuits, they controlled the components. So you find more carrier independence. You can do SD-WAN over DIA, over existing MPLS, over 5G. So you're not, just pigeonholed down into one carrier to manage that for you. Lower latency and less overhead on an SD-WAN network. And, you have full-time visibility, and a lot of the providers now, back in the day, you had an MPLS network, you'd have an AT&T manage that network. And now you would have no visibility into that unless it just didn't work. And now, you can co-manage. So you have full-time visibility into your network through a portal, through a cloud application, and then, improved access to cloud native applications that you might be running within your, environment.
So how does SD-WAN improve network performance and reliability?
Well, you can dynamically identify and prioritize traffic, versus back in, the MPLS networks where you'd see an alert on congestion. Now you can actually, that's handled inherently within the console, the management consoles. You can monitor the network for conditions and automatically throttle and reroute traffic. So that stuff happens automatically now. Dynamic aggregation of circuits. So instead of having a traditional failover circuit or an MPLS network, you can use both circuits into that office or into that location. And again, the management is much easier, right? So you have a SaaS-based portal that manages everything across that network. And so you have visibility to everything at one, from one console. It makes it much easier, using a software approach versus kind of a combination of hardware and software.
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of providers that have, that have checked the box as being SD-WAN, but can you go a little bit into like same IP failover and what the benefits are of that?
Yeah, so same IP failover gives you automated failover, right? So you have things are seamless now. You have extremely high uptime and availability, and you don't have you're not required to have expensive dedicated circuits, right? So it just becomes much easier and much more seamless when there is a problem within the network to self heal itself, and that's the beauty of SD-WAN. You now start to see self healing networks.
Right. So you'd have no drop calls, or your point of sale wouldn't have to
Right. And
re-register and drop off.
you see that prioritization of the traffic, right? So, you're similar to MPLS, you can classify traffic and, rate it based on priority.
Yeah, I was at a customer yesterday that had an issue. It was a local restaurant that the internet was down for basically 24 hours, but had just come back up. Um, and they were scrambling trying to get all the tickets done from the day before, close out the credit cards. Where, if they had a SD-WAN solution in place, they would have never dropped a phone call or never had that issue at all. So
Well, that's the beauty of it. It works over, wireless too, right? So, or Starlink, or it doesn't matter, right? So you can route that traffic at a wireless connection, which makes it really effective.
right, and you can have just certain applications go out certain
Yep.
uh, circuits as well, right? Like if I just wanted my phones to stay up and go over that not priced 5G network, then I could just keep my phones on that. And so great. So we may have covered it there, but can you explain a little bit about traffic management and prioritization?
Yeah, again, the SD-WAN, it's going to use real-time performance data, and it's going to automatically reroute traffic based on performance and policies, right? So you can frame what you want that traffic to do, and it's going to dynamically do that for you based on performance and policies.
So what about cloud applications? Like my existing cloud applications, how do they integrate with SD-WAN?
Well, that was one of the primary purposes for the development of the SD-WAN architecture. Now, even leading into SASE frameworks, is the ease of or the need to access those cloud applications extremely fast and reliable. So it kind of spawned the SD-WAN experience. Um, you know, uh, extension of the WAN into the cloud is the result of SD-WAN and making that, things like, all the big cloud providers have, high availability connections into those data centers. And you have real time, performance optimization for those SaaS-based applications, kind of what you just said. You can base performance based on the need, right? What's the priority of that SaaS-based application? Maybe an HR system for employees is a lower priority than Salesforce for the sales team or something like that. And you can also, optimize workflows for those cloud platforms, so.
Okay, so what about security? What does SD-WAN offer to protect my data and to ensure the connection secure?
I mean, it's using traditional frameworks for, security, encryption, authentication, access control policies, and, for, applications and data, right, users. So all of those things kind of, inherently make it really a secure platform to use.
Okay, so it sounds difficult. So how difficult is it for SD-WAN to manage?
I mean, my experiences with providers that we work with and that, we've used is, it's actually easier, right? Because it's, a cloud-based management console. You're getting, everything within that network is visible, right? And so versus using an HP OpenView to manage networks or a tool like that, that's in your data center, servers, all those things. Now you have cloud-based performance monitoring that's right at your fingertips. It's real time. Some of the suppliers that we use, and this, you can go in and see exactly my entire network, 200 locations, 50 locations, whatever it is, all the circuits, and see what trends, what's going on, what's the historical traffic. So it just makes it much easier, and you get so much more visibility into the network.
Okay, so how does SD-WAN integrate into my existing network?
Well, that depends, right? So we see pretty much everything. I've seen, actually SD-WAN deployed over MPLS, right? So it depends, it depends on the use case and what the applications are, how many users, the types of users, types of locations. There's some people that I want to get rid of the MPLS. I want to get rid of, my DIA locations. So it just depends. It's inherently easy to deploy because of the management console, because of the way it's most manufacturers now have it inherently enabled. Tools like Fortinet, Palo Alto, they have it inherently native to their devices, so it's pretty easy to deploy, and it's pretty flexible about where you use it and what you use it over or with.
Right, so there's some providers like Fortinet that would replace your firewall, your existing firewall. And then there's providers like Big Leaf that would sit in front of your firewall, right?
Yep, that's right. Yeah. So and there's providers like Big Leap that are just purely an SD-WAN play where the Fortinet suite, you can also enable the Fortinet SD-WAN solution with the firewall functionality. And then there's players like Ariaka that are moving into, the SASE, the Katos they're going up the SASE framework for zero trust and DLP and all that kind of stuff as well. So it's built on the SD-WAN, but now they're putting in all these security controls into their technology. So, SD-WAN's been around for a little while, and but now it's moving into that SASE framework.
So you've mentioned SASE a couple of times. Can you explain a little bit more about what SASE is?
Yeah, so SASE is a framework that it starts to you start to get the functionality where you have zero trust, you have DLP, you have cloud security, and and secure access, secure edge. So some companies like Ariaka and Kato will have all the controls checked, where other players will just have some components that they do well and they don't do certain other functionalities within the controls of the framework.
So what emerging technology do you see coming along with SD-WAN? What changes do you see coming along with SD-WAN over the next 3 to 5 years?
AI is the big one, right? Everybody's talking AI, everything, and so, but the reality of it is that's what is the large language models that are being built into these management consoles are starting to do things. That's where you're seeing stuff like the machine learning that's coming in to see the historical trends of network performance, and they can start to use those LLMs to start doing traffic optimization and rerouting and all those things in real time. Integrating security with the SASE controls, that's a big one that's coming. We're seeing a lot of that. And integrated threat protection. So when I say threat protection, network now, traditionally security, cybersecurity and networking and even firewalls were very siloed. And what you're starting to see is, within the SOC and the NOC integration, those security controls feeding into the network. For instance, if I see from a security perspective a malicious IP, I can bring that into and start running playbooks to blocklist that IP from getting into my network, and you making changes on the firewall, dynamically doing those kind of changes. It's an automated response. So you're starting to see that come to play as well. There's a convergence of the NOC and the SOC coming together, where traditionally they were very separate, even on the firewall perspective.
So what advice would you have for an organization that was wanting to implement SD-WAN?
Well, not all SD-WAN providers are created equal, right? So I would, due diligence, just like any technology stack, is of the utmost important in leveraging, partners like us and that have access to hundreds of vendors, and doing that due diligence with a trusted partner is always key and essential, and you know, not just jumping, in the car with one vendor, but to evaluate 3 to 5 vendors that are in the space, because they're all going to do things a little bit different, and they're all going to give you a different perspective of why they do it differently and how they do it, and then also the relationship of those suppliers. Some are easier to work with than others, right? So, find one that you get along with well, and that you kind of build some trust with, and that they have the technology for your use case.
Right, and anyone could, just reach out to us and we can do a deep dive with them and
Absolutely. Yeah.
walk them right through that process.
Yeah. That's what we do, right? So we do it every day, for companies all the time. And, like I said, whatever the technology is, we have access to hundreds of vendors that we do business with.
All right, well, I've been asking all the questions, so let's open up the mics and see if anyone else has any questions.
I see we've got Ryan and Jeffrey. You guys got anything? We can even talk about hunting and fishing, Ryan. I heard you're a big hunter.
Well, if we don't have any questions, then I want to thank everyone for joining us. Hope you can join us next month when we